Anger demands immediate release. It wants to be satisfied immediately. But that release is often not in the hands of those we wish could give it to us. Left unchecked, anger can be extremely destructive. It can destroy you. It can destroy the child you are raising. We run a class in our organization that's called Processing Your Anger. And many parents, after attending our parenting classes, realize the problem is not the child. The problem is me. I'm always screaming at this child, and I'm really angry at everything they say and do. The problem is me, and I need to change. When a man is at war with himself, that man will have war with other people. How do people handle anger at the home front? An angry wife, how does she handle life? An angry husband, an angry colleague at work. Do you have a colleague like that? Is that colleague sitting in your seat? Anger among friends. In the book of James, chapter 4, and verse 1 to 4, a question is asked. What is causing quarrels and fights among you? Then the question is answered. Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? Did you hear that? What is causing fights and quarrels among you? In other words, why do you have fights and quarrels in your network of relationships? The answer is they come from evil desires within me. It says you want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You are jealous of what others have, but you don't get it. You can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. You don't have, yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want it only for your pleasure. When a man quarrels with his wife, and a man quarrels with his neighbor, and a man quarrels with a watchman at the gate, and the man quarrels with his employer, who is the common relationship in those quarrels? It's the man. That man needs to sort himself out. He must stop thinking that everybody else is the problem. And what I say about that man, I say about the woman as well. Anger turns unholy when our desires are blocked. The result is killing or seeking revenge. When Joseph's brothers were angry at him, they sought revenge. Why were they angry at him? What evil had he done? They were angry at him because his father showed excessive love to him, and they felt left out. So the anger within them messed up their relationship with Joseph. And if you are full of anger, or you think you may have anger challenges, my friend, you need to work on it. Otherwise, you'll disqualify yourself as an effective parent because you will mess up those children. So once we notice that we're struggling with issues of anger, or your child is struggling with them, we have an opportunity. Remember, character is built in adversity. We have an opportunity to examine what's going on in that anger and to find out the genesis of it and to help build our child's character in the midst of that anger. In the dealing with the anger, we need to deal with our own anger as well as the feelings that the child is going through that are turning that child in an angry way. Many parents fear to deal with their own anger, and many parents don't even want to know what the child is going through because they have no idea how to deal with it. If you're going to raise confident children, if you're going to raise children who have a healthy self-esteem, we must be able to deal with the emotion of anger. Ignoring a child's anger or responding in a manner that's inappropriate or disciplining or or working with that child in a manner that doesn't build up that child will destroy the child's self-worth. I'll give you an example. This is about my neighbor. This is not about me. It's about my neighbor. My neighbor's child came home and has scored a low mark on the history test. This child wants to study and become a lawyer. This is the last year of high school. The child comes home and says, "Dad, I failed my history test." "Dad, is this the final test?" No, just one of those continuous assessment tests. So the child is saying they failed. "Well, how did everybody else do?" "Dad, out of a class of 20, 19 failed." What emotions are going through the parent? This parent is taking the child to a very expensive school. The child is about to graduate from high school. They want to be a lawyer. History is necessary for taking law, and they have failed. How do you feel as a parent? Sad. Whose fault is it if 19 out of 20 have failed? Is it the child's fault? No, it's the teacher. The teacher's fault. Okay. So you're going to show up at school and do what? And tell off the teacher, isn't it? With your arms akimbo, isn't it? And what will you tell that teacher? "I'm paying all these fees and..." Yeah. Yeah, we are paying all this money, and this is the performance you give to us. That is how the typical parent will handle it, isn't it? Because they are angry and they know they are paying a lot of fees. Well, how's the child feeling about that situation? The child is embarrassed if you go there and do that. The child is feeling really bad. You are feeling bad. The teacher is feeling bad. Nobody is winning. What if you are to ask yourself a different question? Ask yourself, when all is said and done, what do I want to see in this situation? What you want to see is a child who's doing well in history. That's the only outcome you want, isn't it? And so your course of action must result in good performance while preserving relationships. Now tell me, friends, how many of you are teachers here? Yeah. When 19 out of 20 kids in your class fail, how do you feel as a teacher? Horrible. But who is there to sympathize with you? No one. I want to suggest to you that in helping your child through this crisis, remember our overall topic, the genesis of the challenges of self-esteem? Remember the building of character in a crisis? Remember that? In helping your child through this crisis, let me suggest to you that you go to school, but not with your arms akimbo. You go to school and speak to the teacher. "Mr. Ogola, you must be really upset at my daughter's performance." Pause. Don't talk too much. What do you think will be Mr. Ogola's response? You are Jennifer's dad. Yeah, Jennifer could have done better. You are not accusing him. You're in fact empathizing with him. You must be really discouraged. And then you ask Mr. Ogola, how did the other children do? Now you know how they did, but you're trying to pull it out of him. Yeah, on this test they struggled. He will not admit that 19 failed. On this test they struggled. And then you ask him the million-dollar question. What can you and I do together to help Jennifer? How will that teacher respond? Suddenly, you become an ally with the teacher and with the child to help them in improving their grades. You are not tiptoeing around the area they're struggling. Neither are you going there to blast the teacher. You want the child. And so the teacher tells you, by the way, Jennifer is a very bright student. But Jennifer struggles in math. And during the history lesson, she's always doing her math homework. If Jennifer just listened to my teaching, even without studying, she could get 80%. Suddenly you know how to resolve this problem, isn't it? But it takes a parent who has mastered some of the techniques of dealing with their own anger to help a child who is angry to approach a teacher who is angry to resolve a problem. If everybody is blasting off their anger, nobody benefits from it. Are we together, parents and non-parents? The second emotion I'm going to talk about is fear. Fear is when we don't attain our goal, an uncertain goal. Is that unpleasant, often strong emotion that's caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. You are driving and you get a tire burst, and you don't know if you'll be able to control this car before it rolls. You are afraid. We fear things we cannot control. We feel we are in danger. The danger may be physical or it may be relational. The child is afraid to tell you the crisis at school because they're afraid of how you may react. So they bottle it in instead of talking to you about it. It exposes our inability to preserve what we most dearly cherish. The child cherishes their relationship with you, and they want to preserve that, but they're afraid to tell you what happened because they think by telling you what happened, it will destroy the relationship. Are we pulling together on this? Fear. So when fear comes in, a child's convictions are overridden. When they are overridden, the child acts out of character. The same thing happens to parents. You lose your job, and you're afraid to tell your children. So you leave every morning like you used to. When the kids have arrived at school, then you come back home. You're afraid that if you tell them you lost your job, they may begin to talk about it at school, and you don't want to look smaller in the eyes of other parents from that same school. Adolescents fear not being accepted by those of the opposite sex. They fear that. Children blame themselves when they see or hear parents fighting. They fear the parents may separate, especially if this children has a friend whose parents separated, and the kids are talking, and one child says, you know, mom left. They were quarreling one evening, then mom left. When your child hears you guys quarreling or just talking in loud decibels, they think you're about to quarrel and about to separate. Children fear what would happen to them in the event that parents separate. What do men fear? Guys, what do you fear? Some men fear their wives. Men fear being out of control, isn't it? They fear being unable to support their family. They fear many things. Do you know what your husband fears? Do you know what your wife fears? If you're constantly pushing your husband in the area that he fears the most, how are you affecting his self-esteem? And how is this affecting the children you are raising? The third area is the area of shame. Shame because a goal has not been reached. The painful sense of having done something wrong or improper or immodest. There are many angles to it. Maybe you've done something wrong and now you've been exposed. Your nakedness has been exposed. What you did in secret has now become public. There's a sense in which you are not naked in the bathroom as long as no one has seen you. When you know someone has seen you, you become ashamed. Or perhaps you're trying to attain a certain goal. The goal was not blocked, but you're unable to achieve it. You feel shame. And sometimes all three emotions come in. You go for an interview. You are the most qualified person for that interview. You have a little fear before the results come. When the results come, you find the person who was less qualified was taken. Now you feel shame. And all of these interplay. It's very hard to admit it when you are feeling ashamed. Is your child battling with shame? Is your child battling with fear? Is your child battling with anger? They need help in all those three areas. If we lose the battle in those three areas, the child's esteem will be eroded, and that child becomes very vulnerable to peer pressure. A man standing in front of a crowd without their zipper pulled up, and then they realize it, oops. A woman who's put on their lipstick meticulously and then discover some of it is on their shirt and on their teeth. Oops. A 10-year-old, 12-year-old who is still wetting their bed. They don't want to go to spend the night at the neighbors. Do you have a child like that? Are you helping that child through that crisis? Or do you say, you can't go because you're going to embarrass yourself with the neighbors? Further pushing in the shame thing. Friends, what factors promote these emotions? I call them primary emotions, but in fact, anger is not a primary emotion. We do feel something before we feel angry. We feel invalidated. We feel embarrassed. We feel something before we feel angry. What factors promote changes in the family? The change may be as mild as change of house help. It may be as moderate as one parent traveling more often. It may be as severe as the separation of parents. Divorce, separation, death, anxiety, stress. What is stress? Stress is the difference between what you hope to get and what you actually get. All these things are affecting your children. And a small thing like change of school. I remember when our son was in class 7, we wanted to change him to a different school because we knew that his potential was not being tapped in the school where he was going. We knew that he could rise to a higher standard if he was challenged to it. And so one Friday afternoon, we took him for an interview at Kilimani Junior High School, Kilimani Junior in Hardy. And the head teacher, the principal of the school, said to us, it is not fair to assess a child's performance in a one afternoon interview. Leave your son with me for a week. Let him attend class with my boys and girls. And at the end of the period, we can find out how his performance is compared to my boys and girls. We thought, great idea. So we left our son there. It was a day school, so he was coming and going. At the end of the week, he did the exam that other kids were doing and performed extremely well. He was taken in that school, but he was upset. Why was he upset? This is a school with better performance than his previous school. Why was he upset? Because he left the previous school without saying goodbye to his friends. For parents, you're thinking, he's in a better school, it's costing us more money, therefore he must be happy. But that's only part of the situation. Friends are important to children. A simple thing like change of school, even though it's a better performing school, may get that child's esteem really rattled. During that week in that new school, he is the only one that was coming to school with home clothes because you couldn't buy him the uniform of that school. Everybody from a distance knew that's the new boy. And he was also under pressure because he knew he needed to perform to be able to remain in that school. We had to spend time with him every day talking about how school was. Not just how was class, but how was the break time. Because the break time is the most lonely time for a new student. Walt Hendrickson, my spiritual great-great-grandfather, he says, when you mentally embrace something so that it finds acceptance in your thoughts, you will be unable to resist expressing it when the opportunity presents itself. Many are led captive not because of some overpowering temptation impossible to resist, but because the temptation found acceptance in the mind long before the fall. Thoughts seem friendly and innocent, but they are the path to ruin. Are you in touch with the thoughts of your child? Are you in touch with the emotions of your child? Are the emotions that are uncontrolled going to destroy all the convictions that you've built in that child and thereby lower their self-esteem and make your child more vulnerable to peer pressure? You see, when your child is angry, he will come up with a belief system. The belief system where the child has anger and shame, when the child is afraid, when the child cannot trust parents, they come with a belief system that says, I will gain love and acceptance all by myself. I don't trust dad. I don't trust mom. I don't trust my siblings because they tell on me. I don't trust God. I don't need these people. I will take care of myself. When you see a child trying to protect themselves, they are struggling deep, deep inside. Children are supposed to be protected by their parents when they are young. When a child is fending for themselves, the security system has failed. That child may not be able to articulate it the way I'm doing it, but their own action shows it. Samson, can I help you with this? No, I'll do it myself. They come home and go to their room and lock themselves in. They have an air around them that tells you, keep off me. That child is struggling. As a parent, are you present enough to notice the child is struggling? The child is doing the best they can to protect themselves from pain. But remember, friends, character is formed in adversity, isn't it? So when that child is going through that pain, you need to walk with them. You need to be able to find out what's going on in their life and come alongside them. The child develops a system of dealing with anger and dealing with shame and dealing with fear all by themselves. Parental involvement is a must. It's critical in helping this child out of this crisis. But that involvement must be the right kind of involvement. In closing this talk, I'm going to give you 5 ways of building the child's esteem. 5 ways of building the child's esteem. They are not the ways you will read in the motivational books, but these are ways that honor God. I will name them, then go through them one by one. Number 1, teach them the importance of honoring parents. Teach your children the importance of honoring parents. Number 2, help the child to find value during troubled times. When the child is troubled, help them to find value. Number 3, provide healthy boundaries for your children. Number 4, treat your children with tenderness. Now, some men are saying, hey, I'm not a tender person. We'll talk about it. And number 5, place more value on people than things. When you walk through these, you'll be able to rebuild your child's security and clothe that child with dignity and begin to rebuild their self-esteem. Let's look at them one at a time. Number 1, the importance of honoring parents. The scriptures say, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Then the promise follows, that it may go well with you and that you may have a long life on the earth. that it may go well with you. Teach your child to honor you when they are young, and you honor them as they are growing up. There are many dark days that lay ahead for children who don't honor their parents. There are some frightening verses in the book of Proverbs. We don't have time to read them, but note them down for yourself. Proverbs 20:20 and Proverbs 30, verse 17. They are frightening verses for children who don't honor their parents. So here's a question for you as the adult. How do you treat your parents? Are you impatient when your old father calls you just because he asked for money last time? Do you think he's going to ask for money again? And if he does, what's the problem anyway? Can you not talk to him with honor even though you may not be giving him the money he's asking for? Honor your parents. Friends, our walk with God is evaluated by the way we relate to one another. The scriptures say, do not pretend to say you love God when you have issues loving a neighbor. God whom you have not seen, don't say you love him when you have challenges loving your neighbor. A neighbor in this case may mean your child, your spouse, your parents. Our love for God is manifested by our love for each other. How do you respond to your child? What's your tone of voice when the child is dishonoring you? How much anger is expressed in your home? Your children are on edge because dad and mom are always quarreling. In helping your child to deal with esteem issues, you must create a peaceful environment. Number 2, valuing the child in troubled times. We fear trials for our children, but I want you to go back home thinking trials are good for our children. Ephesians 5, verse 3 says, not only so, but we also rejoice in our suffering, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because the love of Christ, the love of God, has been shed forth in our hearts through the Holy Spirit whom is given to us. Once you realize that the crisis is designed to build you up, walk with that child during troubled times. When we have gone through trouble, we become more sensitive to those who are going through a crisis. But it depends on how we are coached through that trouble. And the parent is the first line of coaching that God has given to that child. When you are gracious to your children, when they have messed up, they get to understand God's grace. God's presence can be real in times of loneliness. We seek him deeply when you are in a crisis, and yes, we do connect with God. So be sure to reassure the child that this crisis will not crush them. Build them up during that crisis. Number 3, set up healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries provide security for those who are within the boundaries. We must set limits in what our children can do. There are those parents who say the child is just exploring. Let them be a child. This child is trying to poke things in sockets, and you're telling them you cannot do that. They're just children, really. They see you taking your blood pressure medication. They are just children, right? Let them also take, no. We need to put boundaries. What they can and what they cannot do. What will harm them. They need to grow up in a home knowing right and wrong. Then they feel secure within the limitations of those boundaries. In your home, are you afraid to set boundaries because you think you'll harm your child? Not setting them does more harm than setting them. Let them know a sense of right and wrong and what will happen when wrong is done. Number 3, treat your child with tenderness. Does your tone of voice communicate that the child has value? It was not uncommon in our house when we are upstairs and a glass drops and falls downstairs. Before I tell you what we do in our house, what would you do in your house? What did you do? You are upstairs and you know that delicate wine glass that you just bought has fallen and you know it's broken. How do you react? Who did that? Who broke my glass? And you come down storming, isn't it? Now remember, no amount of anger will fix that glass. You know what my wife does? She says, sorry, is anybody hurt? She knows that whoever broke the glass is feeling horrible. She knows that already. And she will not be a contributor to making them feel worse. Make sure you wear slippers. Let me come down and help you clean it up. When all the cleaning is done, then you ask what happened. Controlling yourself and helping that child when they're in a crisis. Men, you say, well, we are not tender. Here's a thought for you. If you're a man with an iron fist, try putting on a velvet glove. Your iron fist will be much nicer to feel when it is clothed in a velvet glove. Do you touch your children when they're in a crisis? Do you go down there, the child is feeling horrible because they broke something, and you give them a little hug, tell them, I'm sorry. Even before you find out what happened. You are not sorry they broke it. You are sorry of the crisis they're going through, and then help them deal with it. Or are you the kind of parent that always explodes at everything? Is your voice to the house pet more gentle than to your child? You go, puss, puss, puss. But your child, we, kuja hapa. Children remember acts of tenderness with amazing clarity. I remember one time driving, we used to live in Mukolwe, and Michael was, how old was he when he burnt his leg? Maybe 2, maybe 3 years old, and his leg was scalded in hot water, and I was rushing him to the hospital, and guess what? Traffic police. I was speeding. So I pulled to the side and explained to them why I was speeding, and they let me go. And Michael was thrilled. He'd never seen Dad drive that fast. And, his leg was packed in an ice pack. And you treat him gently, even though it was his mistake to get burned. He learned his lesson. Now it's time to recover. Remember, when all is said and done, you want to retain the relationship. You don't retain the relationship by continuously quarreling with a child. A hostile remark from a father will leave emotional scars on that child that will be remembered for a very long time. Do you remember a hostile remark from your father? Any of you? Just one remark? Anybody willing to share it? One hostile remark. You're willing? Come. I'll give you a microphone. One hostile remark from a father will be remembered by the child throughout life. And as husband and wife, be on each other's side. When your husband makes a hostile remark, as his wife tell him, you know that really will mess up our son. We need to take care of it now.
While we were young, my dad once told me, if I don't work hard, I'll go and be a house help somewhere. I'm saying my dad told me if I don't work hard at school, I'll be a house help somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. And how did that make you feel?
I felt really bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did that affect your performance? How did that affect your performance?
I'd always remember that and work hard so that I don't be one.
Okay, so why do you resent your dad for saying it? You see, that talk made her work harder, but it strained your relationship with your dad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I'd feel like I'd be sort of neglected
Yeah,
if I don't do something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And perhaps the picture of a house girl at that point in time was not a positive picture. And that remark was not designed to destroy her. It was designed to motivate her to work hard. But in fact, she remembers it very negatively. The fifth area. We need to have more value on people than things. And we spend time with what we value. There are men who are constantly repairing their cars. With the slightest scratch, they respray the car. But those same men, their wife will be saying, we need new curtains in the house. We need to recloth our sofas. They pay no attention. Or perhaps the ladies, you're constantly buying yourself and grooming yourself and spending lots of money. But your child needs something and they don't receive it. If you were to overhear your children talking behind a tent like this, and they're talking about the values of their parents, in what line of priority may the children put themselves? Oh, dad is all about work, and then car, and then house, and then mom, and then dogs, and then us. They know where they fall in that line. Well, how about mom? And they'll give that. The child is feeling like they're very, very low ranking. We need to turn that around and put more value on people than things. Well, in ending, how about if you have messed? If you have messed, admit to your children that you have done wrong. Squeeze their arm and talk to them. It was not unusual when I was going to bed for my wife to say to me, did you realize that you hurt? And he'd mentioned the child's name when you made this remark at the table. And I'd completely be oblivious what remark I had made. And she'd remind me. It was time to get out of bed, put on my gown, go to the child's room, and make peace. Then you build your child's esteem. When the child is talking to you through their struggle, listen carefully, don't lecture. Cry with them over something they are hurting over. I don't mean shed tears, but I mean empathize with them. Write them a note to express how precious they are. Let them realize that they are special to you and you to them. And no matter what they go through, you are going to be an ally, but you'll work with them to rebuild their character. Pray with them over a past trial. Pray with them about something that is coming they're afraid of. Maybe it's an exam. They don't like the teacher. They're afraid they're going to fail. It's a real fear. Work with them and pray with them. You see, friends, when your family is pleasing God and functional, that family will be founded on God's word. Relationships in that family will honor one another and will honor God. There'll be peace in that family. There'll be healthy self-esteem and healthy behavior. On the other hand, when a family is struggling, everybody is telling lies because they're afraid that if they tell the truth, they will not be loved. When the lies are found out, shame follows. When the lies are exposed, pain follows. When a child is in pain, their self-esteem is lowered and their behavior is distracted. There's destructive behavior within the home. That child will seek the company of their peers, and peers will fuel your children with dirty fuel. As we end this session, there are those of you who are not parents and perhaps are struggling with issues of esteem. Perhaps you need help before you can raise a healthy child. At the back, we've got some flyers that talk about our classes. This is the second chapel public parenting session I've spoken at. These sessions are designed to expose you to what you need. They are not designed to resolve your problems once for all. There is a lot more where this came from. Let me encourage you to enroll in classes. I saw at the beginning a show of hands of those who have been to our classes. Invest money in the raising of your children. This church has charged you very little money as registration. When you come for the real thing, it will cost you a lot more. But pay to invest in your children. This church is not making money from you. It is giving you an opportunity to listen to content. We have in the back a number of books that will be very good for your library. How and when to tell your children about sex. When I began to teach on parenting 20 years ago, I used to say, talk to your children about sex 2 or 3 years before puberty. These days, that's too late. You need to begin from age 3. Yes. And if you don't do it, someone else will do it. And they will do it with horrible content. Get yourself a copy at the back with Diana and with Bonnie. Here's another one. Courageous Parenting. The Passionate Pursuit of Your Teenager's Heart. That book is a must-read if you're raising teenagers. But don't wait for a child to become a teenager, because nothing magical happens when the child turns 13. The child begins to transition into adolescence right from age 9 or 10. And this, of course, our all-time bestseller, Raising Future Parents, a must-read for all parents who want to interrogate the way they were raised and how what they became is influencing their child, and give you practical tips on how to raise a godly generation. Then we have here 2 journals. We call them Peers Without Pressure. It's a journal. It's not a devotional. It's a journal. Journal 1 is designed to take you and your child through the Gospels. So don't buy these for your children. Buy them for yourself and the children, and go through them together with your child. It's very, very simple. It is the Gospel broken up in 20 verse portions, chewable portions. By the time you finish Journal 1, you have systematically gone through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and gleaned enough to be able to live a life that honors God. And Journal 2 has Proverbs and the rest of the New Testament, apart from Romans, Revelation, and do we have Hebrews? And Hebrews. Those 3 are missing. So Journal 3 is going to have Psalms, Hebrews, Romans, and Revelation. That is still in the preparation. God wants us to use His word for transformation of life. And this journal is designed with pointed questions that help you to reflect on your life and get yourself transformed. What you cannot do directly with your child, when you expose them systematically to God's word, God will do it for them. But you have to take the initiative to expose them to God's word. May the Lord use those words to build you up and to help you to demystify the myths of parenting in this generation. Parenting can be real fun, and you can enjoy it. God bless you.
Asante sana, Daktari. We do appreciate you for your ministry and for your time. I'm going to ask actually a quick question regarding the journals. Is that like age bound?
Okay, this journal is designed for any child who can read. We believe if a child can read, they should be taught to read the Bible. We believe that a child who can read should read the pure word of God, not just stories about the Bible. There is time for stories, but when they can begin to read, they are ready for the real thing.
Asante.
Yeah. 7 years and above,
Uh-huh.
or 6 years and above. If a child can read, they can do it. The key thing for success
Okay.
is for the parent to do it with the child. You see, friends, children are learning even when we are not teaching. So when they see you having your quiet time and they've got a book similar to yours, they will want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Asante. Asante. Help me appreciate Daktari tafadhali. Maybe I have just time for one. Do we have a question from the audience? As I invite Madam up, Mrs. Mukolwe, karibu sana, patients. We just want to thank you for, again, your ministry and what you have done over the years. And here we have a little gift. My wife does it better when she presents this. I just say asante. But we just want to say thank you for... is there a question before I give this? All right, all good. We're all ready for lunch. But just thank you for your ministry. For some of us here, it's our first time to meet with you, but not our first time to hear about your ministry, even to read your materials and to go through it. So asante for investing in your generation and in the one coming after you. Tunashukuru sana, sana, sana. May one day we will tell our children and our children's children about the investment that you have put in us. So asante sana, a little gift for you.
Asante. Please help me appreciate the Mukolwe's country. Asante.